I can't remember exactly how far the first aid station was, but I think it was when I got to that aid station I knew I needed to quit because my salt was like, I know now the reason. My salt was so low, like my sodium, like my right quad locked up so bad that I was like literally stiff leg walking to get to that aid station. I remember I got to those guys at the top. It was literally at the top of a mountain, like looking down over the valley that we all came up and stuff. And I asked these guys, I was like, what do I need to do if I need to quit? Because I can't go anymore. And they're like, well, you can either wait 6-7 hours until we drive down and gather everybody up, or you can keep on going. I was like, I guess I'm going to keep on going because it was a 50K, but it was 2 loops. I was like, I guess I'll at least get down to the bottom and call it quits.
This is your host, Brendan, and you're listening to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. This podcast is all about helping you run your first ultramarathon and beyond. Tune in to hear new and experienced ultra runners share how they got into running in the first place, what inspired them to run an ultra, training and race day tips, and the gripping story of their first ultramarathon. Prepare yourself to be inspired as you hear stories of grit, sometimes failure, but ultimately triumph when our guests finally cross the finish line. Hey, Justin, welcome to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. Super awesome to meet you and glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Sick, man. I'd love to start with you just giving us a brief rundown about who you are. Maybe tell us like how old you are, where you're from, what you do for work, and a little bit about your family if you're open to that.
Sure. So I recently just turned 31 this year, which is pretty hard to believe. I don't really feel like I look like it. I live in northeastern Kentucky with my wife and daughter. We have a beautiful 3.5-year-old. My wife and I, we've actually been together almost 14 years, coming up here in a couple months. We've been married for 8 years this year. High school sweethearts, that whole ordeal, you know.
Yeah.
Really just a very
Congrats.
blessed man to have the family that I have. Thank you for that. I'm a safety specialist with a construction company based out of Kentucky, real close to where I live. I'm currently on the road in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Sick, man. Thank you for sharing. How does running work with your schedule here? So you're like traveling all the time. Do you tend to like bring your running shoes and just hit the pavement wherever you are, or hit the trails? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, and it's something that's been pretty interesting. I try to always take trail shoes with me, at the very least, a pair of just tennis shoes to hit the road. I've definitely seen some very beautiful landscape I wouldn't normally get to see. As I said, I'm in Phoenix right now. It's been a lot of time literally in the desert and up on the mountainside. So it's always an experience. It's always kind of what kind of terrain am I going to be getting into. It's never the same thing from job site to job site or trip to trip, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Yeah, Arizona's a beautiful place to be hopefully hitting the trails when you have a second.
Very beautiful and very hot.
Yeah, good point. What's the temperature right now? It's we're recording March 14th right now, so it's like spring, but what's it like?
There's a storm rolling in, so I consider it chilly, 65 degrees out here. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Chilly.
Yeah, that's what I consider chilly out here.
Yeah, out there. And in Kentucky, what's the weather like right now, March?
It was actually warmer today at home than it was out here. So
really, goodness,
flip-flops. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm in a totally different zone. I'm in Utah, and northern Utah, so it's warm. I'm not gonna lie. This has been a weird winter, a very warm winter. So it was high was 49 or something today, which is pretty warm.
Oh wow.
Cool, man. There's actually a race that I want to do out in Arizona someday. The Antelope Canyon. I don't know if it's called the Antelope Canyon 50K or 50 miler, but there is one that goes through there and by Horseshoe Bend. And I heard this year that they actually are like not letting it go through Antelope Canyon anymore or something, which would be a real bummer because it's super beautiful slot canyon. But yeah, you've heard of it? Have you been there
think
before?
I've been through there, and I've definitely heard of the race. But I think I've been through there going to Sedona possibly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would love to do that someday. Beautiful desert race.
I know they have the what they call it, the Cocodona 250 out here. It runs like right through where I'm at right now.
Yes.
That would be pretty wild to go through.
Yeah, that's a popular one. I feel like I heard of another one recently, but it's not coming to my head. Justin, I want to ask you how you got into running in the first place, whenever that was, if it was recently or when you were a kid. How'd you get into running, and when?
So I'll be first to say I used to run in high school and shortly after when I was first in college, and I absolutely hated it. I did it to lose weight, get in shape, and it was just not for me. I quit running for many years, and when I had my daughter, I was looking for something to do to kind of stay in shape with her. And my wife, she actually pushed me. She's like, just put her in a stroller, take her down to the park, and run around with her. And I got hooked. And I've been like, she's 3.5 now. I've been running for about 3.5 years now, very consistently, probably over the last year and a half. But that's really how I got started, just taking her, and I still take her to this day. I put her in a running buggy and running stroller, and we just go hit the trails together whenever we can.
That's super fun. You hit the trails with her in like this off-roading stroller you got? Like
sometimes, like it really depends on the trail. I mean, we've got a little trail at home. It's up behind the park, and I just let her run, and she sets the pace, which is obviously a very easy heart rate. But yeah, we just do what we can together.
Yeah, that's really fun. I've gone running with my daughter. I have a almost 2.5-year-old daughter. We've gone running a few times in the stroller, and it's been really fun when we have, and I need to do it more often because, I mean, I'm honestly surprised at how chill she is in it. I'm thinking she's going to be wiggly and like, I want to get out of here. But no, she just like sits there and gets in the zone just like me. And we go. It's pretty fun.
It's crazy. Sometimes I have the most deepest. Do what?
I was just asking if your daughter enjoys it too, like.
Oh yeah, to that extent. It's wild. Some of the conversations she'll have with me are just so profound. It's like she just really sits there and thinks, kind of like you're saying. She just gets in the zone, and we just talk the whole time. It's an incredible bonding experience, and it's really good opportunity for us.
Yeah, I think so. That's a thank you for inspiring me. I'm going to do it more.
You're welcome.
You have to hold me to it, man.
I will.
Yeah. Do you find yourself usually going out with your daughter, or do you also have your own runs that you do by yourself?
I would say 90 to 95% of the time I'm by myself.
Okay. So most of the time, but
yeah.
Yeah. How often do you usually go out a week these days?
It really varies. Right now I'm just working a lot of hours, so I try to keep it to where I'm doing at least 2, maybe 3 5Ks a week at minimum, and I try to do like at least one long run a week, maybe anywhere from 5 to 10 miles. If I have more time, I typically go longer.
Okay. Yeah. I imagine that would be tough with a traveling job. Yeah, making that fit in. And you have to work certain hours, like you need to be on site this time to this time.
Now it's just whenever the job site's going, I'm working the hours the crew's working, so.
Yeah. Wait, is that usually pretty early though?
Yeah. I've got a friend of mine, he gets up at like 3 a.m. to go work out, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
I'd rather do what you gotta do, Justin. Come on. Right. 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds like David Goggins stuff right there.
Just don't do it. Started on him.
I just talked to a guy, interviewed a guy. His episode will probably come out before this one. And he, is very inspired by David Goggins. And I think he does have that effect, and he can be inspiring, but he's like a double-edged sword. It's like, yeah, he'll get me out and doing some impressive stuff, but I could also destroy myself following his advice.
You gotta find that
interesting. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, that's how you got into it about 3.5 years ago when your daughter was born. And I mean, you were just running to be fit, I guess, and get out and make time with your daughter, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really just didn't equate to anything more than that. And at the time, I'd never heard of trail running or anything. And I was working with this guy at a different company at the time, and I think he was probably in his mid-50s, and he was a track coach at our local high school. And he had went and done a 100-mile race, and I had never heard of anything above a marathon at that time. I'm like, what in the world is this guy doing? And it just kind of got me looking into things. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing in the world. Now, flash forward 3 years later, I'm like, Cocodona 250 sounds fun one day. Like, it's just weird how you get drawn into that.
I think many of us could, like have similar stories, My story was, I think I was on YouTube and saw one of those Bill Yang videos of a dude and a friend running 100 miles together. And I was like, people do this 100 miles in like consecutively in a day, sorry, more than a day, if a lot of the times it goes longer. It just sounds insane. So that's cool. You met someone who did it. And did you like start running with this guy, or you just knew him?
No, he was another one of those wake up at the crack of dawn guys. I'm more of a stay up late kind of guy.
Got it.
So,
I understand that. I tend to be more of a late person too, but for trail running, I will get up in the morning and do it because it's just so beautiful getting out.
Yes, it is.
Not crazy early, but I'll get up at like 6, maybe 5:30 if it's like I don't know, a longer trail. But do you usually find yourself running later then, like after work?
Yeah, it's typically after work. Like today, I had a few minutes before we spoke with each other. I stopped into the gym and got a quick 5K in and got my miles in for the week, really. But
yeah, it's the end of the week now.
Kind of.
Yeah, that's good for you. I don't have the energy by the end of the day, so that's that's how it is for me. And everyone has their own, what works for them. I guess I have more energy in the morning. Okay, so you heard about ultra running from this crazy guy who did 100-miler that you worked with. And that got in your head. Like, what did you do next? Did you sign up for a 50K, or did you like put that in your head and you're like, maybe I'll do that someday?
Yeah, I think the next big step, I'm trying to think of the timeline of it. I either did a half marathon first and then a 50K and DNF'd, or maybe I did the 50K and then a half marathon. It was one way or the other. But anyway.
Really? Dang.
Yeah. I did the 50K, and I had never done a trail race before. And I've done a very, very few trail runs. I had no idea what I was getting into. I knew nothing about nutrition. I was definitely overtraining. I didn't have any good schedule or anything. I believe the 50K came first because I learned from that. But anyway.
From like a 31-mile 50K you did first.
Yes.
As a race.
Yes.
Had you signed up for any race, like a road race before that or anything like that?
Well, I had done 5Ks previously back in high school and stuff, but nothing real extreme.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah, it was,
look at you.
I can't remember the exact height, but it was a lot of vertical gain. The first mile, I was literally running straight up the side of a mountain. There was a snowstorm the night before, so it was like 6-8 inches on the ground on single track. And like I said, I knew nothing about nutrition. I had a gas station burrito. I'm sorry.
Where was this?
This was Charleston, West Virginia. It was about
West
45 minutes from my house. Beautiful, beautiful track.
I bet. Okay. Before you get too far into the story. So this is this was this last year, 2023.
No, this would have been, I believe, 2021.
2021. You did a 50K. Okay. And this was your first ultra marathon, pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to have you recall everything that you remember about your ultra marathon day, your 50K. You were saying like what the weather was like, and what we want to hear that. What you ate for breakfast. Had you been training before? Maybe let's start with that. What did training look like? And I think you mentioned you didn't do anything for nutrition, but I'd like to hear about what that looked like before your 50K story.
So for training, I really didn't know what I was getting into. I really didn't know what I was doing.
Okay.
And just to interject, I believe I did the half marathon before, and it turned out miserably.
Hopefully.
But for some reason, I signed up for the 50K just to kind of push myself. But like I said, there was a huge snowstorm the night before. I didn't have any idea going into it. I knew I needed salt, so I stopped at a gas station, got a burrito. That was the sum of my nutrition, basically.
Your breakfast?
Yeah, that was my breakfast. I took
Did you bring like on the race? Did you bring any like nutrition to eat of any sort?
No.
Or no? Okay. Any
No.
water? Like, did you have like a water bottle or a pack or anything?
I took a hydration pack, and it was mainly
Okay.
a hiking pack, so that thing bounced like crazy, and it was so cold that the straw actually froze on me. So yeah.
I've had that happen, man. That's the worst.
It was horrible. It was horrible.
What did you? Well, yeah. Did you like thaw it out somehow, or it was like, I'm done. I can't drink out of this because it's frozen, and you're just
done.
running.
Like I held on to it long enough to kind of warm it up, and then 10 minutes later it was frozen again. So I just gave up on it.
Jeez. Okay. So you ate a burrito. You got to the start line. Did you run with anybody else you knew, or is just you here?
No, it was just myself. There was a good turnout, especially considering the weather. I was definitely the very tail end of the pack right from the get-go.
Okay.
And the first thing I noticed, it was comparing the road race to the trail race, was just the community. That's something I've heard a lot, like in different podcasts, different like documentaries and things. There's just a different community, and it really was like everybody's all hopped up and they're ready to go, and you can definitely tell who's the elite runners there and stuff, but they're all there to help see that person next to them get across the finish line. And it was really something I'll never forget. That's definitely something I look forward to in my next ultra marathon. That's something I'll probably get into when I go into the story of my official first 50K, I guess you could say. Some experiences I had, but it's like everybody's there to win, but win within themselves, I guess you could put it. Like they're there to kind of see what their mind can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I've heard too. I haven't run my first ultra yet, so I haven't experienced this. So I don't know myself, but I hope to. The camaraderie sounds fantastic.
It's incredible.
I imagine it's a different vibe, because the marathon vibe from the marathon I ran was very like, we're just hitting it and we're just going hard and no one's talking to anybody, because we're just cruising. Like I did 9-minute miles the entire time until the end, and I was doing like 10-minute miles, and that was really fast for me, considering my training. So yeah, no time to talk, but sorry, I interject a lot.
No.
So, okay, you mentioned it snowed. Like, how deep was the snow?
It was literally 6 to 8 inches on the track we were running on.
Oh my
that was after.
Gosh.
Yeah, which fortunately I was very slow. I was definitely in the back. There was a lot that had already been compressed by the time I got to it, but the first, I'd say probably mile or so, it was just literally climbing the side of a mountain in 6 8 inches of snow.
And your shoes, like, are they Gore-Tex, or are they just soaking it up?
No, I had a random pair of Solomons, and within the first 2 minutes, I had stepped in a creek crossing that was like well above my ankles, and I was freezing cold. I mean, it was everything that could have went wrong that day. But
dude,
I learned a lot.
Yeah, that sounds pretty brutal. Yeah, okay. Okay, so you keep going. Are there aid stations that you're grabbing like drink at or food or anything? You just go and tell me about it.
I can't remember exactly how far the first aid station was, but I think it was when I got to that aid station, I knew I needed to quit, because my salt was like, I know now the reason. My salt was so low, like my sodium, like my right quad locked up so bad that I was like literally stiff leg walking to get to that aid station. I remember I got to those guys at the top. It was literally at the top of a mountain, like looking down over the valley that we all came up and stuff. And I asked these guys, I was like, what do I need to do if I need to quit? Because I can't go anymore. And they're like, well, you can either wait 6-7 hours until we drive down and gather everybody up, or you can keep on going. I was like, I guess I'm going to keep on going, because it was a 50K, but it was 2 loops. I was like, I guess I'll at least get down to the bottom and call it quits. But
So that's what you did. You walked it in from there.
Well, I walked as much as I could. I tried to run some. I ran down the hill a lot, but I mean, it was the most pain I've ever had in my life. It was brutal.
Dude, and just in your right quad, you said, or anywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, it was mainly just my right quad. I mean, my left got to the point it was starting to hurt pretty bad where I couldn't really bend it either. But it was like almost like I had a full leg cast all the way down to my ankle. I could not bend it at all. It was that cramped up.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough. I mean, that is just a rough circumstance for your first ultra too. The fact that it dumps snow and and yeah, I think we're all guilty of not knowing. Many of us are guilty of not knowing how much sodium do I need and the electrolytes and how much should I really have. I sort of did that with my first half marathon. I didn't do anything. Luckily that's a shorter race. So when I was destroyed at the end of it, it was okay because it was over. But in a 50K, you're halfway through. So, so you got to the finish line. Or, I mean, yeah, you came back to like the start and finish line. How are you feeling when you dropped? How was it?
I felt kind of bad that I didn't finish the whole 50K, but I felt good that I overcame basically, I guess it'd be like 8 miles, because I ended up doing 15-ish miles. And I was like, I've never ran as far. I need to at least get to 16. So I walked around in the parking lot after I crossed the finish line just so I could say I did 16 miles. And then, of course, I got some food. I sat down, I had some Coke, and I got in the car and I was like, why'd I quit? I could keep going now, but it was definitely a learning experience. And I realized, like, I think it's more in your head than it is your body, no matter what.
Yeah, do you think you could have, looking back in retrospect, you think you could have David Goggins it if you, would you have wanted to? Do you regret it at all? Or are you like, no, that happened how it should have?
I think it happened how it should have, because I feel like from that point forward, when I really started putting a better emphasis on proper training, proper nutrition, just proper preparation.
Nice. So you learned your lessons, and what is your journey between that in 2021 and when was your 50K that you ended up doing after that?
So the 50K, it would have been last December, probably second week of December, so 2023.
Yeah, just a few months ago.
Self-supported by myself. Ended up finishing in the dark by myself. Had one person kind of, like, that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. I had one person that just ran up to me out of the middle of nowhere from a restroom, came running over to come run with me. It's just some random lady. She's like, hey, I'm running today. Can I run with you? I'm like, go ahead. I haven't seen anybody in 3 hours. So we ran a mile together, and I could not keep pace with her. She's like, what mile are you on? I think at that point I was at maybe 19 or 20. And I could not keep pace with her. I was doing everything I could. And she's like, I'm going to keep on going. I was like, you go ahead. And I took a mile and just walked it. I mean, it was brutal keeping up with her. We got to talking and everything. And she's like, yeah, funny. I'm training for my second 100 miler. And I'm like, go, girl. I mean, it's impressive. Here I am struggling to do 50K.
No wonder I can't keep up with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. What made you decide to do a self-supported non-official race 50K?
Really, it just came down to logistics. I mean, I had a weekend off. I had really everything I had that I wanted to do it with. I had all the nutrition and everything. Just found a good little spot. It wasn't very much elevation gain, like almost a mile and a quarter trail. I just kept doing the loop, and I had a bathroom on both sides of it that I could easily access. And like, I wonder if I can do this. And
you looped this thing like almost 30 times.
Well, yeah. I ended up doing 31.5 miles, so it was about 30 times, yeah.
Yeah, lots of loops. Okay.
Yes, it is.
That's cool.
I got very tired of it.
I think the mental toughness for those types of 50K for those types of ultras, many times it's a timed, if it's an organized race, it's usually a timed race where it's like, hey,
Right.
you do this 2-mile loop as many times as you can in 12 hours, 24 hours. And I don't know how you guys do that. I
Looking
think
back, I
I'd
don't
get in
know
my
how I
head.
did it, but that was the hardest part of it. It was in my head. I actually made a TikTok about it. I started making TikToks about like kind of my running journey, I guess you could say. And like you can see, I did a segment every mile, and you can see after about mile 8, mile 9, I could start declining. And I remember it very vividly. I think it was mile like 17 through 21. I was just in like the darkest place I've probably ever been in my mind, and it was horrific. But coming out of it was like such a mountaintop experience. It was incredible, really. Just those few miles really made the whole race worthwhile.
The few miles after your darkest miles, is that what you're talking about?
I mean, really, I think the darkest miles made the race worth it because it shows me where I can go in my head and where I can come from.
There you go. Well said. Yeah, everyone hits the wall. The wall is there, and it just depends on what you do. I mean, it's as simple as telling yourself to keep going instead of to stop.
Right.
But your brain, I think your brain, like my brain at the end of my marathon is just like, this sucks. Why can't I just be at the dang finish line already?
Right.
Did your training look different at all for this 50K? Were you more consistent leading up to running it, putting in more miles or anything than your previous one?
I would say I was more consistent, but definitely not where I want to be. But given the circumstances, I feel like I was pretty spot on, I guess you could say. One thing that really changed me, I'm a very avid reader, and I read Born to Run. I don't know if you've read that or not yet, but it is a phenomenal book. I recommend to anybody, even if you don't run. So I kind of switched over my footwear and things like that, and I've read a lot into heart rate reading, like heart rate training. I did Matt Fitzgerald 80-20 running, and I did a lot of YouTube research on Dr. Maffetone. So now, like, I strictly run within my heart rate zone. Like, I very rarely get above like 150 beats per minute on a run. On average, of course, I spike up, but I mean, I did that race. I felt horrible, like I said, those first few miles, that period of miles. At the finish line of that 50K, I felt better than I did at the finish line of my half marathon.
Dang, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you put in. It sounds to me that you put in the training, and yes. Great tips. The 80-20 rule, 80% of your training being in like being easy zone 2-ish, running right, and then 20% in your zone 4, zone 5. Right.
One thing I did specifically leading up to the 50K, I was on irunfar.com, and they recommended to do your first 50K to do roughly 30 to 60 minutes a run 2 times a week with a 2 to 3 hour long run leading up to it, and you'd be okay to do your first 50K. I definitely didn't come up to the 2 to 3 hour consistently, but I kind of snowballed that into leading up to it, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool too. Cool to consider that training plan or idea was based on time, not miles. And not intensity. It's literally just be on your feet for 60 minutes running, and whatever distance. Yeah, I think that's really smart. I mean, for many of us listening, we'll be working towards our first ultra marathon, whether that's a 50K or 50 miler or something. I think that's a smart way to go about the first one, to just get your time on your feet, and then you'll know that you can finish. And then, I think that's the most basic way maybe to train. You'll make it. But I mean, if you're trying to go for a time, maybe you need to crack down more than that. But I think that's how I'm going to be training though, is like, that's how I trained for my marathon. I was like, I did it more by miles though. I was like, I'm going to do 6 miles twice a week, and then something like a half marathon for my long run. So I was putting in about a marathon a week in miles. So I based it off of like doing as many miles in the week as the race will be. So maybe I'll do the same thing for the 50K, and maybe it'll work, hopefully. Anyhow, cool. The different ways there are to train for this. How did you feel after you did your last 1.25 mile loop?
I would say I was very happy to get off of that track. I had planned for myself the specific trail I was on. You run up a trail that branches off of it to a 150-foot granite waterfall, and I kind of saved that as like my last segment of the run, as like the finish line, kind of like I guess you could say the prize. And I saved that, and it was pitch black. I ran up there with a headlamp. There was people coming off the mountain because it was so dark, and I'm like looking at this big beautiful thing. I've seen it before, but it just really, I feel like it meant a lot more. It's more of an accomplishment to get to see that once I got done with that. So I felt very elated. That's a good way to put it. I remember running to the car. I think it was about a half a mile to run from the waterfall down to the car, and that was the fastest half mile I did the entire 50K probably.
Get to my car.
Yeah, I had a huge smile on my face. And really, it was just joy. I mean, to accomplish such a huge feat. I mean, I think it's like 1% of the world has ever ran a marathon, and it's microscopically smaller percentage have actually ran beyond a marathon. So it felt neat to be part of that club.
Let's just look it up now. What percent of people have run an ultra marathon? I'm not seeing anything clear, but yeah, I've heard the same saying. I was talking to someone else recently who said the same thing. I was like, I wonder what the real statistic is. Like, I don't know.
It'd be interesting.
Probably a fraction of a percent has ever done an ultra marathon. That is really cool. And I'm glad you felt accomplished at the end. I personally have run races where I didn't feel that way at the end. Like when I ran my first half marathon, I didn't feel like, wow, that was amazing. I did it. And it's hard to nail down why that happens sometimes. Some people, it doesn't hit and it's not very glorious or like, whoa. Yeah. But for some people it is. And I try to theorize with different runners, like why it is that it happens sometimes and why other times it doesn't. And I think it's when you go through the pain cave, like you did at mile 21 or around there. And then you pushed through and you did it anyways. I think that is, if that moment happens to you, I think that usually leads to the feeling of elation when you're done.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. I interviewed, another episode will come up before this with the Batemans. They're a couple that run together. They said that, and it made sense to me because I don't feel like I went through the pain cave when I did the half marathon. I had run a half marathon personally just to know if I could do it before then. So I knew I could do it. And maybe that sort of ruined it for me. I was like, oh, I already can do this. I was so well trained that it wasn't hard, which is a good thing too. I don't know.
I'll say, I don't know if you've heard of her or not, but Courtney DeWalter, big ultra marathoner.
Yes.
I heard her say that, like, someone of her stature, she said there's been times she'll be doing a 100-mile race and she'll hit the pain cave at like mile 3 or 4. So it can just vary for anybody for any set of circumstances.
Yeah, that's true. Because the pain cave, is more, I mean, there's definitely physical pain, but yeah, the pain cave is a mental place. Yeah, you could totally get there at mile 3, especially in a 100-miler. I'm like trying to put myself in her shoes, and I'm like, oh yeah, I just started this massive race and I've got 97 miles left. Holy crap.
That would be horrible.
Yeah, don't think about it that way. In a 100-miler, you got to break that crap down a lot. Like 10-mile increments.
Something I did when I was on the 50K. I rationalized a lot. Like, okay, I've done this loop 15 times. I've only got roughly 15 times more to go. Okay, if I stop here and use the restroom, I come back, I've got this time. And really just breaking it down, like just looking at it head on, it scares you. It scared me, I won't lie, but just breaking it down like that definitely makes it more achievable.
Yeah. Those, every time you reach a loop for you in that situation, or when you reach an aid station, like little goals, it's a good way to break it down, huh?
Yeah.
So glad you felt that elation though when you finished. And I'm going to ask you a question. Did you immediately afterwards start planning your first 50-miler, or have you not done that yet?
I will not lie. I have considered it heavily.
Okay.
I would like to either do a 50-miler or do a 50K in an organized race, just essentially for the community and the camaraderie that comes with the ultra running community. Really, this is the trail running community. I don't care if you're out there running a mile on the trail. It's just something different. Not saying that road runners are bad, because I still road run. I run on treadmills and stuff too, but just something different about people that trail run.
Yeah, and you'd say that it's not just felt at ultra running events of, the super long distances. You'd venture to say it's just the trail running community.
100%. I would say a 5K on the trails would be significantly different than a 5K on the road.
That's really cool. Yeah, I haven't done shorter distance races on the trail. My shortest was that half, and then I'm going to start again this season with a half, and then a 25K, and then the 50K. That's cool to hear that it doesn't have to be. Any of y'all listening, I guess you don't have to be an ultra runner to get the cool vibes of the trail running folks. And I think that's probably true. I think many of us that go out there to the trails, we just love being outside and in the mountains. Yeah. And it's fun to be in the mountains with people. And you talk and meet people and have cool conversations. Yes. I think there is a special bond or camaraderie that sometimes comes with those long distance races, though. I've heard many of folk that I've interviewed say, I was running, and halfway through my 50-miler, I started running next to this guy, and we became best friends. Yeah. Like at that moment, like they ran the rest of the race together, and like they're still talking today. Maybe they don't live close, but you still keep in touch with these people that you really only meet for one day in your life, but now you're like close friends. It's interesting how that can happen in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. I think what it is, at least in the long distances, like you're just in such a vulnerable place. Multiple people are in such a vulnerable place, and you're just willing to be open with people. That's just something you don't really see much of anymore. Just being open and honest and making those true connections.
Preach, Justin. That was well said. It makes me,
Thank you.
That made me sad a little bit, but it's true. It's like, how often do you have a real conversation with somebody?
Right.
Like, I really appreciate this and doing this podcast because I have real conversations with people, and it's really refreshing and fun. But you're right. Like at work, how often are we having real conversations?
Right. How often does it just extend beyond that? See you 9 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Yeah, and like the depth of the conversations too. It's like, I think, yeah, the majority of our conversations are surface level, and maybe we can even fall into that with our families, and that is sad because those are the people we should be deeply talking to, especially. But I think it is like human tendency maybe to like be surface level and just, yeah, I don't know. You get in the routine of things. You're just stuck. I don't know how to explain that. But let's all strive to be more real and have real conversations with those that we're around. I think that's a great lesson from what you just said, Justin. Can make better connections. So you haven't signed up for a race yet, but you're thinking about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely something.
Go ahead.
Something on the horizon.
Yeah. Okay, I'll keep you to it.
I appreciate that.
I'll reach out to you. In a month.
Real.
Justin, you signed up for something, right? It's coming. Season is coming. It's spring. It's time to sign up.
I'd say as a trail runner, it's always season.
That's true.
Whether it's running
and where you're at,
in the desert.
Yeah, maybe even easier. Like, people do say that in Utah, but it is harder when the mountains are covered in snow. But many people don't take that excuse and they just go anyways. That's cool.
Speaking on that, I watched an incredible documentary a couple of days ago when I was flying back out here from Kentucky, and it was about the first person ever to do an Ironman in Antarctica. That was pretty wild to watch.
No. Like,
that's what I was kind of thinking. I mean,
I'm
into the whole Wim Hof cold water therapy and stuff, but I mean, swimming in Antarctica, no.
See, the running and the biking, I'm like, okay, feasible, but swimming?
Yeah.
Are you insane?
Right.
Have you considered, this is a good question, have you considered doing triathlon? Or are you like, I'm a runner? Yeah, it came.
I've got a friend that I've made, of course, through running. He's a guy that I live close to at home, and he is full-blown Ironman. And he's probably going to listen to this podcast and text me and say, hey, you need to be signing up, because he's always on me to be signing up. But, I mean, I think about it all the time, and I enjoy biking, I enjoy swimming, but I think I'm just a runner. I just love to see how far I can go.
Okay, well, careful, because you know how it I think you know how it is already, because you knew that 100-mile runner. And if you know, if you know any ultra runner, like, just being around and talking to those people makes you want to do it. And maybe it's the same for triathlons, but I'd be the same. I'd be like, no, man, I'm running. You do you. Yeah. I'm not getting into all that other stuff. Yeah. I think it's too much. Yeah. I'm like running already. Like, I got to buy I'm sort of in a phase of life where I sort of have to budget still. And I don't know, be conscious of how much I spend. So I'm like, I can't I can't buy like all this, like, biking stuff, especially, man. Like, that costs so much, and
tens of thousands for some of those nice high-end bikes. I mean,
exactly.
I'm good with a $60-$70 pair of running shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I bought some Hokas for $160. It's like, yeah, that's pretty expensive, but this is a lot. But like, compared to a bike, like, yeah, this is affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, don't do it. You gotta stay on the light side. Just kidding. You can do whatever. That would be cool too if you did a triathlon. I would not blame you. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep you to it. Would love to hear about it when you run your next Ultramarathon, and thanks for coming on today and sharing your story, and thanks for talking about your DNF, and I would count that as I mean, it wasn't your first completed 50K, but
Right.
people need to hear that because it happens. Some people will not finish their first ultramarathon, and it'll be hard and it'll suck for whatever reason. If it was the elements or under preparing, like, it happens. So, but you went out there and you made it happen on your own. And I love that.
Try.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks again. Thanks again for sharing your story. You mentioned you have a TikTok. Do you still do that? And would you want people to follow you?
Of course.
You could share your handle or whatever you call it.
I'd have to look that up. I use TikTok and Strava primarily.
Very cool. Yeah. Feel free to share that if you like, or if you don't have it on you, I'll just include it in the notes. But
okay, we'll just do that. I'll shoot it over to you.
Follow Justin in the notes, the show notes. Just look down below in the description and you'll find his Strava and TikTok. Thanks again, man. Appreciate your time and excited to see where you go.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, your host Brendan here. I just wanted to thank you personally for listening to today's episode. As someone preparing for my own first ultramarathon, I've found these conversations to be super valuable, and I hope they are for you as well. Whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or somewhere else, make sure to follow or subscribe so you know when the next episode comes out. Also, make sure you check out the show notes of this episode. There's a link to sign up for the Ordinary to Ultra email newsletter, to join our Facebook and Strava groups where you can meet other people striving to run their first ultra marathon, and see any links that our guests may have provided as well. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next episode.